So I recently went to South Africa, a country that my father and my brother were born and raised in. They left the country a very, very long time ago, and pretty much by leaving the country, they leave their family behind. Now, I've been to South Africa actually numerous amount of times, about 4 times, but as a kid, as a newborn, I don't remember that obviously, so I don't remember. I went to South Africa a few years ago, and this was generally one of the few countries that I actually really enjoyed going to, despite the problems that were very obvious when arriving in the destination. Instead of just only looking at South Africa in a negative way, let me tell you and talk you through my experience a while ago while I was in South Africa and what I generally think of South Africa and would I live there as well. We hadn't been there since 2017, 2018. That's quite long. And not just only that, we wanted to see my grandmother. My grandmother is my father's mom, basically, pretty much. She's quite old. Yeah, she's about 86, 87. She can hardly walk. She really has struggles with walking. But hey, at that age, I'm just glad she can even talk and walk. Because at most of the times, people that age, they're not really capable of doing stuff independent. She lives on her own. She does everything on her own. But don't worry, she does have a boyfriend who comes over every single night. He just refuses to stay there because he likes his own house. Can you blame the guy? No. You cannot blame the dude. He just likes being alone, I guess. He's kind of like me. So we went to South Africa with the thoughts of, man, it's been a few years and she can't fly. She cannot travel. She cannot walk far. She can literally walk 30 seconds and then say, I need a break. So we went to George, a place that I had supposedly and allegedly been before as a little baby. As again, I don't remember that obviously. Why my grandmother lives in George? Well, it's quite an interesting story and it's quite a long story. So just to cut it short, my grandfather, Opa Hans, he was born and raised in George and they had met somewhere and decided to get married. She lost him in 2010, 2011, so yeah, she's pretty much been alone since then, which you can imagine really sucks. Now let's talk about South Africa as a country itself. When arriving on destination, beautiful. Honestly, the scenery is something else. It is without a doubt one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. These suburbs are phenomenal. They are kind of strange and different than Dutch suburbs. It's very dense and on each other in the Netherlands. You remember how fucking big South Africa really is. Like, holy shit, South Africa is like a million times bigger than my country. In a way of like, whoa, you want to go to another state, it's like 5-6 hour drive sometimes. That's the entire country, the Netherlands. You can literally cross the Netherlands from the northern side to the bottom in 4-5 hours time. And that's how small our country is. It's quite interesting when you compare them. The scenery is absolutely stunning. The nature is absolutely stunning. The way that they pretty much make the suburbs and the metropolitans and the cities combined with nature is definitely truly a work of art, I must say. Look, I'm gonna be honest very straight up, right? The thing about South Africa which attracts me and my father the most, obviously because he was born and raised there. Even though I'm not a South African naturally, I do feel somehow connected to the country in a way of it's a nice country. Would I live there personally? Unfortunately, no. It wouldn't matter where you lived. It just would be a no for me. The reasons why I wouldn't and couldn't live in South Africa is because A, I've been born and raised in the Netherlands. I've had pretty much everything in the Netherlands. Yes, the Netherlands is not a very cheap country to live in, but if you look at the infrastructure and everything, we are one of the best countries in the world when it comes to infrastructure and just in general healthcare. And that's not to brag or say, oh, I'm better than any other country. No, but it's just a fact though. If you search up the statistics, it's just like Switzerland. Yes, it's not cheap to live there, but look what you get in return. Very important. You got to look at it as a return investment. You got no choice but to spend a lot of money, but look what you get back in return. We got good roads, we got good places. We got no bumps in the roads exactly. Now I was actually very surprised when I went to South Africa how good the roads were. I'm like, holy shit, these roads are better than the roads in Belgium. The roads in Belgium are absolutely horrible. You cannot drive a low car. Like my car, for instance, I cannot drive in Belgium really. What makes South Africa so amazing and what I like about the continent Africa itself is they're themselves. They don't try to be something or someone they're not. And what really just made me so relaxed was the fact that none of that Western bullshit was involved. That's definitely a thing that I really, really like about South Africa is they're not pushing certain agendas in your face. Now, why I mention this is because it can be too much sometimes when you have certain agendas or something pushed in your face, propaganda some would call. And in South Africa, I hadn't seen any of. If there's one thing I must say about South Africans is they're pretty chill. They're very humble as well. And that's definitely something that opened up my eyes like, wow, these people don't have much. Because I've been to the slums by accident twice. can tell you this, it's not a nice place to go as a tourist or just in general. It is really sad to see the harsh reality of what average South Africans must go through every day, because you got to understand South Africa is quite underdeveloped in ways of job wise and other stuff. Because the country is so big, the suburbs are massive, which has its perks, bigger houses, massive houses for Dutch standards, big gardens. The downside of the biggest suburbs is you need a car in South Africa. Unfortunately, it's not like in the Netherlands where you don't really necessarily need a car. You've got public transportation pretty much everywhere. In South Africa, it's kind of a different thing. Yes, they do have the buses, but I got told by my cousin the buses only were a thing a few years ago, and that tells you a lot. I mean, we've had buses since I don't know what year, but that says a lot. The reason why is because obviously South Africa is massive. Now, I'm not saying that they will ever make a whole transportation in the country. No, because at the end of the day, the country is way too big. They don't have the funds for it, which is another thing we'll get into just now. But the culture was phenomenal. The food, awesome. If you want some real good food, go to South Africa. Don't go to McDonald's, please don't. The first thing you should not do in South Africa is go to McDonald's. I don't even think my father and I been to one McDonald's in SA. I don't think we've even ever been to McDonald's in SA. Why? Because when you go to South Africa, you go to try the people's food on the street vendors. Awesome, brilliant. You'll only really find those type of things in the cities, like in the cities, not really with the outer cities. The food's great. The hospitality is awesome. Now, the one thing that some people, I guess, would complain about is something that didn't bother me, because as a foreigner, their exchange rate is phenomenal. What for them is expensive was very cheap for us. We were like, whoa, this back at home is 4 times more the price. You see, the average South African does not make a lot of money, unfortunately. And there's also a lot of people within South Africa that, struggle with education, because that's also another thing that we take often for granted in our countries is, education, I don't like going to school. These people would love to go to school. And I'm referring to these as South Africans. A lot of people don't have that opportunity because a lot of people in South Africa also grow up with poverty. It's a never-ending cycle, pretty much. A kid gets born into poverty and doesn't have the chance to go to school, which means that they have a high chance of not getting a degree later, and they having a child ending up in that situation as well. So it's a very sad situation, but at the other hand, they handle the situations very well as well because of the fact that they stay and remain humble. And when we were there, tipping is something that, look, I know in America, for example, tipping is really a thing that, you must tip. It's a tipping culture. A lot of people don't like it. When we were there, I tipped this specific waitress because she was very, very kind. She helped us. She asked where we were from. It's those type of small conversations that I, as a tourist or as an outsider, can really appreciate. And I thought, I tip her €10. Which tipping someone €10 in the Netherlands is kind of a normal thing. You sometimes tip 20 or 30, right? Here's 20, 30. It's a normal thing. €10 in South Africa is a lot of money. It's pretty much 200 rand. And that's what some people make in a week. Or like in a day. It's really bizarre. Now here are some things that you mustn't do when in South Africa. Do not insult the culture. That is definitely one thing that I do not advise. Don't be flashy in South Africa. Don't be ignorant. Respect the culture. This is what a lot of people seem to forget when they come from another country to another country, is that the cultures are different. South African culture is very different than Dutch culture. It's more open, it's more friendly, and the people are just super duper chill. And that's why I would definitely want to go back. And that's why I'm considering going back in March next year. Now, I don't know if we're actually going to go to March. I really don't know. It all depends on my father's planning and, if we're able. Even if it's just a week. We stayed there almost for 2 weeks. Well, pretty much 2 weeks. And it was amazing seeing my grandmother. It really was. Now, yes, South Africa does have its issues as well. But I don't want to say and speak too much about the issues, because each country has its issues, unfortunately. And the biggest issue in South Africa is the government. That is the number one problem. It starts and begins and ends with those people in the government. Yep. They have been pretty much fucking up the country since they came over in 80s, 90s. And pretty much the country has been going downward. Everything's got more expensive. And also another thing I should mention, if you ever do want to live in South Africa, just know it's not as easy to get a house there as a foreign country. This was my first time in over 6 years visiting a foreign country. And it happened to just so be South Africa again. I have amazing memories. If it was up to me, I'd go there right now. I would just never live there, unfortunately. I couldn't live there because of the current situation in the situation the country's been in for multiple decades. Do I ever think it's going to change? Unfortunately, it will not change unless the people start getting wiser and start pretty much choosing different people. But people in South Africa in general, they choose the same people every single year. I don't know, every 4 or 5 years, and people complain about the issues, but then they're also a part of the issue. You keep on voting on the same people that are fucking up your country. Why they do that? Nobody knows, right? And also another thing I wanted to mention, there's a thing called load shedding in South Africa as well. What does that involve? Pretty much multiple times a day for a few hours, you don't have any form of electricity, which is a massive thing in South Africa. And why? They can't afford it. That's really it. As a country, they cannot afford to have 24/7 electricity. It's a genuine thing. A few years ago, I didn't know this concept. I was like, what does this mean? I was like, oh, there's no electricity. What? It's pretty bizarre because I was walking in the store and it happened that the electricity fell out. I was like, oh, what the heck? Oh, yeah, load shedding. And then they have a power up generator running on diesel, and then you can just continue your ways. It's a very interesting way. You have to adapt to that sort of stuff. Like, it's something that I could definitely not get used to. I'm very sorry, man, but no electricity, multiple hours a day, no, I can't do that. My grandmother, for example, she hates it as well. She genuinely hates it. I mean, you can imagine at her age that having no electricity is a horrible thing. Not to mention her house is very cold. Yeah, that's the one thing I do want to say about South African houses. Single glass. What a weird concept that is. Strange. Really, really strange concept. My window is double. Except for my door. That's only single glass. But it's been pretty decent. So I thought I was open and honest enough about South Africa. There isn't much anything I can else pinpoint. The safaris are incredible. And the country is massive. Dude. The country is insanely big. You're really underestimating it from a pinpoint of view of, don't look that big. It takes days, maybe even weeks to travel the entire country. The travel to South Africa, yeah, it wasn't that phenomenal because we didn't have a one-way flight. We had to stop from Brussels to Dubai. It was a fuck up. It was pretty much 2 days of our travel time. And the next time, we'll definitely try and see if we can go in one go because it shuts off 2 days of worth of traveling. I hope I was transparent enough. If you want to live in South Africa, good luck. I wouldn't recommend it personally. Because like I said, it doesn't matter where you live, man. There's danger all around. It's the same with the suburbs. The suburbs are literally slab within the middle center of the city. You drive 2 minutes out and then bam, you're hit with poverty. That's also a thing a lot of people don't realize when they're in South Africa. It's like, whoa, it's totally different than where you live. Because it is. Welcome to the real world of South Africa, where there is no fairy tales and shit. People gotta live with what they got every single day. When I speak about homeless people, yeah, I mean, obviously there were a few homeless people there. Not too many, though. That's one thing. We didn't see many homeless people. And another thing I wanted to mention is prostitution, which was something that really surprised me when I was in George. I didn't see any of that. If you go alone, just make sure you go to a place which is pretty safe, has nice accommodations and nice places around, and have a guide tour. Honestly, do not go to places that you're not familiar with, especially at nighttime, especially if you're a woman, because it's high risk being a female at nighttime in certain places, unfortunately. So really hope you enjoyed it, but yet again, it is a gorgeous country and I have some great memories.